Welcome back to another episode of the Marketplace Mavericks, where three guys over the hill guys talk about their journey on Amazon, getting started as Amazon sellers. And today, we are privileged to have royalty with us. We have the one and only Gap King.
Gap King, welcome, Mr. Omar. Man, we're
Welcome.
so glad to have you on our podcast, man. Our first guest.
Like I
Yeah.
said, the honor is mine, and I'm so happy to be here. So happy to be your first guest. I'm really proud of what you guys have been doing, and I do take a little offense. I'm not over the hill, and neither are you.
Oh,
A
matter
matter
of
of
perspective,
perspective,
I
I
guess.
guess.
Yeah, we
Respect.
we all we met the Gap King. We were all like we talked about on our last podcast with the Flips for Miles program on, so we none of us have actually met each other in person.
One of
But
us.
Well, we
I met
have.
Blake.
oh no,
Yeah.
that's true. That's true. You do have met each other. Um Down at the Miami Sellers Conference. We have all been in Omar has done this for a little bit longer than us, not too much longer, but a little bit longer. And he has done it a little bit differently than we have. And we kind of want to show everybody how there isn't just one right way to do the Amazon thing. And I think in our online group, it's more of being taught what not to do than exactly being taught like, hey, you got to do it this way and this is the only way. So yeah, we're going to kind of start off and we just want to know, Omar, kind of like a little bit of your background, where you came from, what brought you to Amazon in the first place.
Sure. I mean, I guess if we get into the background, I'll go from the start. I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit. When I was a teenager, I wanted to be a DJ when I grew up. So I had, two radio shows in high school, two radio shows in college. And if it wasn't for just an amazing professor I had, I would have been a DJ or I would have been in the record industry. But he kind of steered me towards corporate America, which was the right decision. And I spent a lot of time in communications and marketing, pretty much half my career in both, doing all kinds of things from, manufacturing organizations to tech. I worked at, Meta for a little while, and, kind of just been all around the world, but, all of the time trying to find my space as an entrepreneur, done, tons of different things. And a friend of mine who, I've done, kind of a bunch of different entrepreneurial things with since college. He said, "Hey, try FBA." It really didn't click with me. Didn't make any sense. It was a couple years ago. And he was doing it. He was doing it at scale. He actually stopped doing it to do DSP, if you guys are familiar with that, Amazon delivery service providers, where effectively everybody that you see in those Amazon trucks doesn't work for Amazon. Amazon will help you get leases and help you, in the warehouse space, but they don't work for Amazon. It's a great liability thing for them. But a couple years after that, I said, "Hey, this thing I've been following Flips for Miles for a while, and Warner and all those guys." And I said, "Let me buy his roadmap program." Told my buddy, and we got off the phone. 10 minutes later, half the program money was in my account. So he's one of those guys. He's like, there's never an excuse, right? So he doesn't let you have one. So I was like, I guess I got to get the program. But I took the program. It was a great program, but I made a mistake. I'd been doing social media professionally since probably like 2007, and the community thing was stupid. It's like, tell me how to make money, I'll follow the program, and I'll be fine. I don't need community. And so I did that, and just brought a bunch of stupid things, got weird lead list. I was going into Kohl's trying to RA single items at a time. And I was just like, how do you scale this? This doesn't make sense. And I said, I'll take a little break. And I never came back to it. And around, November, I was just like, Miles knows what he's talking about. I screwed up because I screwed up, not because he doesn't know what he's talking about. Let me try his coaching. It's a little expensive, but I've spent more for less. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But this time, what I ended up doing was taking the community part very seriously. And so I met a woman, Erica, in school. And we basically talk every day, source all the time. And she knew I was going into Kohl's because that's what Miles was doing at the time. He was talking about Cuddle Duds and Gap. I started, buying some Gap. And she was like, "Hey, there's an ASIN that you can check out. It's usually sold out online. It's sold out in stores, but comes back in. And if you can find it, buy it." I brought a couple and they sold immediately. I was like, holy crap. And Miles is always like double down. So I brought out all the stock around me. and they were selling like crazy. Now, you take into mind, I was just starting effectively in November, got my first sale, I think, in December. So I had a really short Q4, but in December, I did about $12,000 in revenue. The ASINs that she gave me were my top performers. I sold about 2,500 in those two things. And I was like, this woman just gave me my biggest revenue generator, and it was just no big deal. And I was like, I realized that community was going to be the biggest thing. So, getting in group chats, connecting with people, really active on Twitter. That's actually how I got my name, the Gap King, because I was starting out. I was only buying 2 and 3 Gap hoodies at the time, but they would sell them. I didn't want to get caught with stock, so I wouldn't buy 5, I wouldn't buy 10. I would just buy a couple. So I was literally in Gap Monday through Sunday. And I was posting about it, showing pictures like, hey, epic Gap run, blah, blah, blah. And a guy, he was just like, you know what? You're the Gap King. And I was like, you know what? Thank you. Yes, I am. And I was just like, I ran with it ever since. And maybe we'll talk about it a little bit later. But that's how I've kind of worked my networking. So I'm not just Omar, I'm the Gap King. For me, it's a little bit easier to remember the Gap King than just some random Eric or some random Tom, the Gap King. So that's my story. I've been it since November, really December when I got my first sale, and just trying to scale like you guys.
So I'm curious, Omar. Actually, you mentioned something really interesting. You were talking about the delivery service providers, which
Yeah.
you guys, none of you guys, Blake or John, know this, but I actually signed up to become a delivery service provider. This was like maybe a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and I was out in those trucks hustling and
Oh,
delivering, making
really?
those deliveries. Yeah, I did that for about I don't know, 4 or 5 months, and it was pretty fun. There are some ups and downs, with everything, but I gave it up and went back to the corporate world, which is where I am now. But I thought it was interesting what you mentioned about that.
Now, Pete, were you a driver or were you an owner?
I was a driver. Yeah,
Okay.
I wasn't. Yeah, I didn't own the trucks. I just basically drove for them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. So there's two pieces of it too.
Right. Yep.
You can drive and then you can own. My
Right.
buddy, he actually he leased 15 trucks from them, had warehouse space. That it really like FBA and FBM is profitable. That's a really great way to.
The one downturn with that was there's huge turnover. I noticed there was constantly, new
Yep.
drivers like every week.
Yep. It's
But
not easy.
with everything, there's always a challenge. But
Yep.
Well,
one
anything
one of the
that's a
questions I had for
challenge, it's
you,
uphill. That's where you got to be. You got to work it uphill if you want something.
yeah, yeah. One of the questions I had for you, Omar, was really, about Gap. I mean, what really drew you to Gap? Was it just the ASINs that Erica gave you? And do you solely focus on Gap now, or what do you? How does that look for you now?
Yeah, it's interesting. So for me, nothing drew me to Gap. I'm what I preach a lot about networking into this community, but also one of the things I try and work in there too is just being open-minded. So people are like, "Oh, what do you only sell Gap?" I'm like, "I'll sell anything that'll sell." We were on a sourcing call yesterday. What was yesterday? Sunday? What is today? Monday? I'm like lost, but I think no, it was Saturday. We were on a sourcing call Saturday for like 3 hours, sourcing all kinds of things from Jellycat to baseball packs and whatever. And somehow we got, oh, you know what? I think I started selling, or I'm testing in ASIN right now. It's seasoning, and it was funny because the major brand is kind of like an inappropriate name. I was a little surprised that it sold on Amazon, but we started talking about adult toys, and I was like, oh, you know what? That's an interesting place because those robots and those realistic dolls. It's a really, it looks like a growth market to me. So we started going down a rabbit hole of sourcing that. And I'm just like, listen, if someone's going to buy it, I'm going to sell it. And that's it. So back to your original question about Gap, Miles was sourcing Gap, and I picked up a couple of Gap hoodies that he mentioned, and they sold. And so I was like, hey, let me just buy more. And that was the thing. And I kept buying, I kept selling, kept buying, kept selling. And that was really it. Now, what happened was is I purchased so much. Gap has a rewards program called Gap Cash. It kind of steamrolled, and I ended up with $5,000 or $6,000 in Gap Cash at one point, and I ended up spending like $7,000 on Gap hoodies, right? So it kind of like snowballed into each other. But I sell all kinds of stuff. I'll sell film. I just told you I'm getting into spices. I'm selling grocery now because I've been doing some RA locally with some folks. So I'll sell anything. But Gap, it happened to be the thing that people kind of associate with me with because of Q4. And I love it. I mean, I think it's great. People look at Gap and apparel like, oh, I don't want to sell it because of returns, and I get returns just like anything else, but generally speaking, most of the returns that I've gotten at my house, they are resellable. So
Yep.
I'll just take them, repackage them, and send them out. And sometimes people, they'll try and get you, but they'll try and get you on anything. Somebody sent me back a pair of headphones that were used, that were clearly like 10 years old, didn't have the mic, and they weren't the same unit, but they got over on me because Amazon wouldn't accept my claim. So people will return anything, but with some of the clothing, you can see that they wore it and they tried to wash it or something, and you can't resell
Yep.
that. But I'll just run that for clearance on eBay, and just it's not a total loss.
Right. Are you more OA or RA, would you say?
I would call yeah, I do a lot of OA, but in some cases when I can, because what I'm trying to do, there's a gentleman on school called Thomas Cruz, goes by Tony. I've kind of taken on his philosophy, which is trying to recycle my money as quickly as possible. So anytime I can FBM something, I will. And so I will do what maybe somebody would consider like an OA hybrid, where I'm buying online and going to pick up at Gap. So that's what I was
Okay.
doing. I wasn't
Yep.
doing RA for Gap. I was doing that OA hybrid where I would buy it, then go get it. So I can get it up for sale today and
Yep.
ship out tomorrow, because I'm trying to get my money to flip over as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Tony gives a lot of good insight with that. That man
He's great.
is, hopefully one day we're going to have him on also, because
Hopefully what? All
yeah,
you got to
yeah,
do is
we
reach
don't
out.
We
do
will.
hopefully.
All
We
you
will.
got to do is reach out. This
Yeah.
guy is making $150,000 a month, and he almost begged me to get on a call to talk to me for an hour about something I needed. That's how accessible that guy is. He's
His
unreal.
attention to detail is unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And
Yeah.
that's where networking with Amazon and your online group, and even if you aren't part of an online group, it might be a little harder to find, but you can go on Twitter and Instagram and you can find it that way.
100%. And let me give you a little nugget. Just we talked about Tony. So let me tell you how Tony made me a bunch of money. So I had a community call because Erica and I, the woman I mentioned a little bit earlier, we talk every day, and it's just like, how do you scale? We see this college student making 10 grand
Yeah.
profit a month. This woman's 6 months pregnant. Now she scaled to 50K in 3 months. This guy, he's fresh out of college and he started in December. And now he's making 100 grand a month. How is this possible? And so I put up a question on our community school, and Tony and Ian, the top two posters on the
Yep.
community, responded immediately. We ended up having a 1 hour call. And as I mentioned, Tony had to leave a little bit early because he's going somewhere with his girlfriend, but he was hot. He DMs me later like, "Oh, I'm so mad. I really wanted to talk to you, Omar. Do you want to talk to
He
me?"
li-
Like, yeah. And long story short, we ended up getting on a sourcing call. He showed me the web scraping he does, which is like 10
Oh,
times over my pay grade. But he also showed me how to source Gap. And I say we loosely, made this, high velocity ASIN lead list. And it's so funny, man. I tell this story to everybody. I see Tony put it in a folder 37-47877 that he's never going to look at again. And I'm like, "Hey, would you mind? Like, can I get that list?" And he's like, "Sure." He sends it over. He doesn't even rename it. It's just some trash that, was automatically put in there. And I go into the sheet and I start sourcing it. Now, what I couldn't figure out is because he has some script in there where it can automatically take you to the product.
yes.
The products weren't working. Now, I'm like feeling super grateful. I'm like, I'm not gonna reach out to this guy and say, "Hey, you messed this up. Like, how do you fix it?" I'm like, I gotta figure this out on my own, but I couldn't. All the links were broken. And I'm like, I'm in Gap every day. So I'm like, let me just see if some of this stuff is in store. And it was in store. And I picked up some of the things, and it was crazy. Just like the Erica item, these things started selling. 2 days later, I had $1,000 in revenue, and I made a post on school, and I'm like, "Hey, this is why you guys need to make friends because of this." And it's $1,000. 3 weeks later, I just let me do an update, and I realized that it generated like $6,000 in revenue. And I was
Oh,
like, that's one thing. But the funnier thing about this story is that I guarantee this guy never looked at this spreadsheet. And
no.
he comes into the comments and he goes, "Yeah, maybe I should look at it. I never looked at it." And I'm just like, you think about that. This guy generated $6,000 in revenue for me in 3 weeks. I'm tiny, right? I don't know. I probably wasn't even doing 10,000 a month at that time. Outside of like Q4. And this guy doesn't even look at the spreadsheet. I to
Right.
this day don't think he's looked at it. But you
No.
can meet these kind of people every day just by doing outreach. Seriously. And putting out good content. Like, you guys are putting out good content with your
Yep.
podcast. I guarantee if it hasn't started already, people are going to start coming to you and you won't have to do any outreach.
So, Omar, one of the questions that I had for you was tips and tricks.
Yeah.
For RAOA. Like, I think you've probably pretty much hit on those things. What is that? What are the tips and tricks for this?
So for me, and this is no disrespect to the RA community, I just don't get it. I don't like it. It's part of the reason why I failed in the first place. And go out there and scan it for life. It feels awkward. And my tip for RA, like if you don't like it, and even if you do like it, or you're scared of the idea or whatever, find somebody. I'm in a New Jersey group chat, and I just put this out to the people. I'm like, hey, listen. If you do RA in New Jersey, I will drive to you. I just want to do RA with somebody. And a woman, Sarah, was like, hey, what's up? Let's do it. And, she was off for like spring break or something. I don't know what it was. And, I was like, I'll drive to you. Now, so not everybody's going to do this, but I don't care about driving. I drove 2 hours to meet her down in South Jersey, but I'll give it to her. She drove an hour to meet me. And we met at, I don't know, like 10 in the morning or 11 in the morning, sourced through lunch for 5 hours straight,
Wow.
filled our trunks with product. So that's my biggest tip for RA is because it's not going to be awkward. Is somebody's going to think that's either your wife or your girlfriend, or if you're with another male, or you're two women, you're just two friends shopping, right? So it's not awkward. That person may know more about you, about grocery or wherever you're shopping. We were doing grocery at grocery outlet, and she knew some of the ASINs that were good. So we were picking out stuff. We weren't just blindly scanning, and the time goes by fast, and it just makes more sense. So I think RA that way is great. For OA, there's tons of types of tips and things like that. What I would say is get a partner, get a group. I'm sure you guys source together. It makes it a lot easier. When you're doing outreach, I'm in a bunch of group chats. I'm in a bunch of Discords. I'm also in a bunch of like WhatsApp groups. What you will find, and it's crazy, you will get leads that you don't even ask for. You will find leads that you don't even ask for. I added a woman to our New Jersey group chat. The next day, she sent us a lead. Next day. No one asked for it. She just sent it. It was an Easter lead, but that stuff happens all the time. There was a guy who I met in school, our community, and also met at MSC. He sends Home Depot leads all the time. He sent us this crazy Target clearance lead. It was a TV that was on clearance. I found one by me. It was like $80. I probably should have kept it for myself. It was like an $80 50-inch Ultra HD TV, but I flipped it literally the next day for like three.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's my tip.
Yeah, that's the thing with Amazon. It's so huge that sharing leads and helping it's not taking any money out of your
Nope.
pocket.
Nope.
Like there is plenty of business to go around. And what, I've made sure on school and from doing this podcast, I have people come into like my DMs asking me like, hey, Miles isn't around right now. Can I ask you about this or about that? And I'm like, and they do the same exact thing that I did. They're afraid to. And I did. They're like, listen, and they always start off like, listen, this might be a stupid question. I'm like, I can guarantee you I asked the
I
question.
can up stupid you.
I was like, it's not. I was like, and it's just kind of like paying it forward. You're like, hey, man, I was asking these questions. And I preface by telling them, I'm like, listen, I'm not some like 7-figure seller on here, like the top of a mountain. All I am is like, I'm just like a little bit higher off the base of the mountain than you are. But the difference and I tell them, I'm like, listen, I'm 4 months in. I'm helping you, you're 2 weeks in. So just take that into perspective. They'll be like, you know so much about this. I'm like, I really don't. I just know more than you. I was like, in 2 months, you're going to know all this stuff and people are going to be asking you. So don't think where you are right now, starting off, it doesn't stay like that. Like you start to figure out, and then you start to figure out your own ways of making money. What works for you? Like here, Omar, I thought you were doing Ray the entire time. Like, no, you're doing you're just going to the store to pick it up so you can flip your money because flipping the money on Amazon is truly an art on how fast you can do it. It is an art.
And Omar, I think if I could sum up, if I'm correct in my assumption here, tips and tricks for RAOA, it's networking with people.
100%.
Yeah.
It is absolutely community. And let me just give you one more thing, because John, you kind of spurred this in my mind. One thing I'm trying to be better about is, and this is really personal because it doesn't come out on a call, but I try not to get annoyed because people are like, oh, I don't want to waste your time. And, I want to meet with you, but I don't know if blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, nobody. I might be
Yeah.
the Gap King, but I didn't name myself that. It's not like I'm like doing 10 million
Yeah.
a year. Like I'm just Omar. Right. And so, I try to like internally not get annoyed at these people because I'm like, they don't realize I'm them.
You're
Like
just like them.
ahead, right?
Yeah. We're all nobodies. That's the thing with
100%.
Amazon. You can do 7 figures. Guess what? There's plenty of guys doing 8 figures. There's plenty of other guys doing 7 figures. Like
Right.
in the world of Amazon, we're all in a roundabout way nobodies.
Right.
You know?
And I was on a call with a couple this morning. I've basically put myself out as the network guy. Like anybody who wants to meet and wants to source, I do it. You can go to thegapking.com and get on my calendar. But, they were like, oh, yeah, I just want to make sure, if we meet again, then I'm not wasting your time. And I'm like, well, this is what I want people to think about for me specifically, but hopefully for most people in the community, just because that's how I've experienced it, is that even when I've met with a guy who had no sales and he taught me something because when we were on a call, he said something, I don't know what he said, but he reminded me that I needed to go do an audit for Amazon for like lost items or something like that. And I'm like, I wouldn't remember that if I wasn't talking to you, the idiot, right? About, Amazon, because like I wouldn't have thought about it. And so regardless of how new you are, how many things you sold, we can learn from each other, right? If you talk to college professors or teachers, a lot of them will tell you they love doing their job because they learn from their students, mentors learning from mentees. So don't not reach out. And other thing is like, today you can talk to Tom Brady or you can talk to LeBron James. All you gotta do is send a DM. And if they don't respond, like, so what, right?
Yeah.
So you reach out to a Miss Seller, to the Gap King, to John, to Pete, to whoever. And if they don't respond, so what? I send messages to people in New Jersey all the time. Sometimes they respond. Sometimes they respond in 2 months. Sometimes they never respond. I don't care. I just talk to the people who respond.
Yeah, I mean that's the way to do it. And that was been without a doubt my number one thing to overcome with doing this because I wasn't in social media. I wasn't in any of that stuff. So it was like it took me about 30 days and all of a sudden I was like, okay, I need to wake up and evolve. Like
Yeah.
I need to start like no, because in my head I was just like, hey, if it's not putting cash, if it's not giving me a lead and putting cash in my pocket, why am I even doing this? And the thing is, like, no, every conversation might not, every DM isn't, you don't need every single one to do it.
But
Like,
one of those will be something key.
exactly.
That's
One
all
of
you
them
need.
is. And then you never know what that can branch out to. Because, like Miles says in our online group, like, chances are there's no one in your specific town. You don't
Yep.
have a friend that's doing this.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you got to go out and find people who are doing this. And you don't necessarily, we all met through Flips for Miles, but you don't have to do. Yes, it makes it much easier. People are a little bit more vetted when they're within our school app, but you could still do it on just X or
Any social media.
Instagram or Facebook. You might have to do a little bit more weeding out people, the VAs trying to message you and all that stuff, but you can still do it that way. It just might take a little longer. That's all.
One thing I'll add to this, and John, you've kind of, spurred in my mind, is that the reason why trolls exist on the internet is because you're anonymous, you're faceless. Even if your name is Pete online, right? Like if you message somebody, they're not gonna remember Pete tomorrow, right? So if you shoot and you miss, it doesn't matter. And so as you continue to do it more, you get more confident. You may have a little speech that actually works. And so just keep doing it until it works. And even if you're shy, because it may not seem like it, most people don't believe this, but I'm introverted by nature. I network, I talk to people because I know it's critically important. Just like I'm afraid of heights, definitely afraid of heights, but I've been skydiving multiple times. I've been, on the highest roller coasters in the world because I don't let it run my life. So just do the outreach and it'll get better. And also for RA, maybe you don't want to do RA with people, but what I'll tell you is today, I don't care what people think. I don't care what the employees think. If they want to kick me out, if they want to ask me why I'm doing X, Y, and Z, I'll just say whatever it is. And if they kick me out, they kick me out. But 9 times out of 10, or 9.9 times out of 10, nothing's going to happen. No one cares that you're scanning stuff. It just feels like it. And it takes you time because I'll tell you the first couple of times I was doing it, the first many times I was doing it, and even today, a little bit. But generally, the more you do it, the more I tell my son, he plays baseball, the more reps you get, the more swings you get, the more
Yeah.
comfortable you're going to get. And it's all about comfort, right? So just keep doing it. RA, OA, reaching out online, going to places, just do it more.
That's a
And
really, really great advice, Omar. Thank you for kind of sharing that. I myself as well am truly introverted, and I tend to like try to shy away from talking to people and afraid of what they think and all those type of things. But um, one of the things I did notice on school here recently was that one of the challenges you've had was actually being gated by Gap. So I was like totally taken aback by that. And I'm curious, has that been the greatest challenge you've had to overcome, or is there something else that maybe we don't know about that you've been struggling with?
Yeah, so I'll say a couple things. So one, and I appreciate you bringing that up because they call me the Gap King. But what happened? So I had made a massive for me restock because I gotten like $5,000 in Gap cash, and if you know how that works, you have to spend money to use the Gap cash, right? So you don't just get 5,000 to buy free stuff. You have to spend, so the way it works is like if you spend 250, I think you get like $100 off or whatever 40% of 250 is, right? And so I spent a crap ton of money on Gap stuff. So I did a massive restock. And then after that, a couple days after that, my account got banned online. So I didn't get gated. My account from Gap got banned. Now, at the time, it was annoying, but it wasn't that big of a deal because this was right after I was talking to Tony and he had given me those ASINs that were in stores. So one thing, I don't know if you guys have seen, but I've done a bunch of epic Gap runs. I cleared out New Jersey. I cleared out a little bit of New York. I cleared out 75% of PA because I just wasn't going to like Harrisburg and Pittsburgh. I cleared out all of Maryland, half of Virginia. And so that's been sustaining me is just going and getting these kind of like in-store only items. But recently I'm like, all my Gap hoodies have been selling. It's time for me to restock. And I tried to get my account back, but anybody who's dealt with Gap knows that these guys, their research department is just not friendly. And so they were like, hey, listen, the only way you can get your account back possibly is to write us a letter. So I literally had to write them a letter. And, they responded. They're like, oh, we can't give you your account back. And so what ended up happening is this time they actually finally told me what the transaction was because that was the issue. It's like they told me that, I used a gift card that was purchased with a stolen credit card. Well, it's my credit card. Who am I stealing it from? So obviously the gift card site that I used, they get these gift cards from wherever. And so things like that happen. Sometimes you'll buy a gift card, which is highly annoying. And I'll buy a $500 gift card and then I'll go to Gap online and they'll say there's nothing on it. Now, you get your money back, but now I've got to spend $1,000 instead of spending 500. So I'm just waiting right now for the gift card company to get back to me so I can try and get Gap to reverse that. But I think somebody actually just gave me a workaround, so I'm probably going to do that, which will get me back in the mix. But I figured out some workarounds, so it's just going to be a little annoying, but you figure it out. And I think so that's one big thing which everybody is going to face, either a Section 3. I had a big Easter ASIN, and now they're saying that I was selling it without a test buy, and so they put a little violation on my account. So I'm working through that. It's not a big deal, but you're going to get a bunch of stuff in this business. It's one of those easy hard things. I think they say about poker is like an easy way to make a hard living or something like that. It's one of those things, right? Like you can get rich, you can quit your 9 to 5 or whatever your goals are, but it does require work, and if you're not willing
yeah,
to work, it's not going to work for you. And I think so Gap is one thing, and the second thing is just capital. What I realized, I mentioned, I think this a little bit earlier, the way I met Tony was through this community call. And we've had a couple of calls about scaling in capital. And one thing I realized that this business is capital intensive.
yes.
So you sell $10 worth of product for $20 on Amazon. Yeah, you made $10 profit, but you still got to wait for it. If it's FBA, you're talking, from purchase to payout, 60 to 90 days sometimes. On FBM, possibly like, 2 weeks or 30 days, depending. And, if you're still trying to buy and sell, that gets really expensive. I've been telling people this week, I got a little bit of inventory here at my house, got a bunch of inventory at FBA. So that's dead capital, right? And
Yep.
then Yeah, I had like something like $7,500 or $7,800 just sitting there waiting to be reimbursed. And everybody wants to say do daily payouts. I do, so
Yeah.
you're not always getting that money now. One thing that messed me up was I was at the Sellers Convention, Miami Sellers Convention. I took a week off from FBM, so that slowed me up and
Yep.
payouts have just started coming back and I had my first $2,000 payout day, but that'll really mess you up. So you need a lot of capital, and that's I'm talking to Ian this week about capital. Hopefully he can give me some additional guidance. I got a little bit of capital coming back into the business this week, but capital I think is going to be a big stopping point for a lot of people and the thing that'll stop you from scaling or quitting your job or
Yep.
whatever big target you have.
It's one of the number one things that I've been working on, and I look at it because I come from brick and mortar
Okay.
business,
Yeah.
and I say, depending on, and especially, you know, older people getting into this that, hey, might have owned a business,
Hmm.
might be familiar with it. I said, so yes, the capital is high, but the overhead is low.
Hmm.
I was like, you can, what you don't worry about is a storefront. What you don't
Yeah.
worry about is rent. For the most part, I mean, even when you start getting VAs or paying yourself, very low payroll
Yeah.
compared to other businesses. Other than, you're not dealing, at some point, you got to get small insurance once you do over $10,000, but it's not much. Not in comparison to
No, not at all.
not in comparison to that. And all of your other bills, a couple $100 in Chrome extensions and Boxem and stuff like that. I was like, so it's capital intensive, but I used an example, I almost owned a gym at one point and I looked into owning a gym. And for me to rent a place, build it out, do everything. And this was not some massive gym. It was 100 grand. I could have made it more. It was 100 grand if no problems happened.
Yep.
And I was like, and that doesn't include my ongoing rent. And if anybody actually walks into the place, and that doesn't guarantee me business. I said, at least with Amazon, yes, but most of your cost is straight inventory. So if you know and you do your homework or you're in an online group or whatever you're buying, you're going to get paid back. I
Yeah.
could stop today and just be like, this isn't for me. I don't like it. And 90 days from now, I will have made money and I won't have any debt. So yes, it is definitely high capital that you need to make money, but it's not all that capital is your inventory. All that capital is what you're selling. But yeah, there's only that 60 to 90 days for the most part. That's what you need to put money out. So it is anybody who says like, you run into a lot of people who are like, well, I started selling books and then I scaled it to this. That's great. They're not telling you the whole story on where they got their money. Not that they need to, but like to think that you're going to invest $1,000 and you're going to just be able to flip that really easily and never have to like take more money out of your pocket just is not. It's not feasible.
Right. And to be clear, I guess for me, what I would say is that capital is my issue, right? But it's a personal issue, right? Your issue around capital, you could if you start with $500 and you do use books or you just do whatever RA or even OA, that's fine. You can turn it into $1 million business, but turning into $1 million business is going to take you years versus
Yeah.
if you could reinvest 50,000 or 100,000 or even 5,000, you'll get there quicker, right? So the whole capital thing, that's not to scare anybody off, right? You have a modest amount of money and you can do this and you can scale it up. It'll just take you more time. You can't come in and you can't do wholesale. You're not going to do private label or any of that crazy stuff. You start is wherever you can, you have the money and run it that way. For me, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get to 50,000, 75,000, 100,000 per month. And you can't just do that because you found some hot ASIN, right? You need capital. But don't be
Yeah.
scared. It's not like you need 100
You
grand
need
to start
capital
this
to start
business.
any business.
Yeah.
You need capital. Like
Yeah.
maybe somebody might get lucky that is an artist or something like that and there's always extenuating circumstances, but for the most part, yeah, you're going to need some capital to do this business. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yep.
Right now, I'm getting into wholesale. I'm making that transition. But I did OA for 3 months as a test. I was like, let me learn this. Let me learn, even though wholesale is different from OA, I was like, let me learn the ins and outs and let me make some mistakes and I lose $50 or $100 and I can go with that. What I don't want to do is buy a pallet of something and lose it that way.
Right.
So let me start this way.
Different equation.
And just learn how it all works. Start to get comfortable talking to people because wholesale, you got to talk to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
And and you're going to get rejected a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And you just got to get used to it, kind of like just DMing people on the internet. You got to get used to that, like, they might not get back to you, or scanning stuff in store. You can't care. Like exactly what you said, Omar. You just can't care. You can't be ashamed of, like, you always say, like, just tell them what you're doing. Like when I call wholesalers now and distributors now, I was the first week, I was all afraid. I'm like, oh, I don't really do Amazon because a lot of them don't like that. Now I just tell them, yep, I do Amazon. And then when they come up with something where they don't like that, I can try to overcome it. And that's really the gist of it.
Omar, I got a couple quick questions for you. We're going to be trying to wrap this thing up here, but what do you wish that you had known when you started, and where is Omar going next?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was community. I think, for me, I'm a big believer in destiny. So I tried the FBA roadmap program and failed because I didn't do community. But I don't know if I would have, kind of been able to grow and scale the same way if I didn't have the coaching. So, I feel like that's not terrible, but for me, it's community. I've heard, a couple of stories where people have scaled without community, but the majority of the people that I know who've scaled and that, are meaningful in this business are people who have good communities. So if you are definitely afraid of people, like me and Pete are afraid of people, but not like so much that we can't be on a podcast together. Like if you stay in your mother's basement and never talk to people, this business is not free. Like generally speaking.
You think because it's e-commerce, oh, I don't have to deal with people. I don't have to do anything. But like I learned real quickly with Miles' program, getting on there, I'm like, oh, well, I'm hiring Miles. And what Miles doesn't tell you, which good thing he doesn't, because I might not have joined, you're really paying for that community. Because the intensive help he gives you is really for only 3 or 4 weeks. Then it's like, and that's how we all met each other. Then you start using the community. And in the beginning, I was like, oh, well, I don't really like that. Like I paid and then I quickly understood. I'm like, oh yeah, no. Miles knows what he's doing.
It's so funny because this podcast, like between me and us, it sounds like an infomercial for Flip for Miles' coaching program and his roadmap. I hope you guys have an affiliate link or something.
Oh, we didn't bring Miles up until last week.
Okay,
we didn't even mention Miles' program,
but we need to. We need to be able to get some affiliate stuff for that.
Yeah, but we do.
There's an affiliate program for school, man. You need to get it or talk to me.
Yeah, no, we do, and that's why we always say, like, you don't need an online program. You definitely, but you need the online presence. Yeah. You want to find it through Discord, through all kinds of other ways. You could make your own online program and your own online crew through X and all those places. It was just a little bit easier to do it this way. For us.
I think, all the information is out there, generally speaking. I learned a lot of stuff on YouTube, how to fix this at my house, how to do that, how to ride this, how to blah, blah, blah. But what Miles's program will do is it will shortcut you. It will put everything you need in place and give you a sense of, how to move through this. But ultimately, what you'll see, and Miles does this too, his program I think is great at that, is that he will put you in places where you can meet community. If you are, a 43-year-old man who likes, small dogs. Miles has a database about people that I've never seen before. He will find you a Russian speaker who lives in Idaho. Like he can get you somebody. So that's another thing that,
is important about it.
It's funny, like to me, like I wouldn't be an affiliate for anything. Like I have like an affiliate link for like Aura the Repricer because I love Aura the Repricer.
Yeah, that's
love Be Cool, but it's trash to me. I know people who love it, but Aura works for me. So I wouldn't be an affiliate for Be Cool. Although, like I'm saying, I think it's trash because I don't like it, but I know a lot of people who love it. So I'm not like killing that program, but I'm just saying, like, we're talking about Miles here because we actually believe in his program. So anyway, that's great. And I'm sorry, Blake, I think you had a couple more questions.
Yeah, well, just what's next for Omar?
Next is really scaling, man. I believe in this business. I know, John, you're talking about getting into wholesale. But I had a conversation at the Miami Sellers Convention. That's another, like, we're affiliate for Miami Sellers Convention.
Yeah.
We had a conversation with a dude doing, Blake, I don't know if you were there or not. You might not have been there. He's doing, 1.6 million a month in December. Miles and Garrett, these guys are all doing crazy money and got coaching program and all this stuff. And this one guy, I don't know why he was even there, honestly. This was an OA roundtable. He kept asking about wholesale. It's like, bro, why are you here? But Steven does business. He was like,
He's that
hey,
really young kid, right?
yeah, he's like 23, 25,
Yeah.
something like that, doing like 6 million a year, something crazy. But he was like, listen, you can do up to 100,000 a month before you have to really get into wholesale. So the runway is there. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of opportunity here. And so for me, what I'm trying to figure out, in the next, I have a conversation with Ian next week, is how to appropriately set myself up for, bringing the capital into the business, how to scale, right? I'm at 20K a month now. I really want to get to somewhere around 60 or 75. What does that look like? And what I've been doing a lot of is doing outreach. You guys, when you guys made your first post, I'm like, hey, listen, if you want somebody who doesn't know anything about OA and RA and barely knows anything about Amazon, reach out to me. And so, I'm just doing a lot of outreach, trying to, be in touch with great people like you. Blake, I had a really great, connection with him at the Miami Sellers Convention. And I'm meeting with people every day. So just trying to continue to expand my network to grow. Because this is one place, like, I don't think you can go and start selling smartphones and reach out to another person selling, a million smartphones a month and be like, hey, can you teach me how to sell smartphones? Like, you just be laughed out of the place. But
Yep.
I
Yep.
got a funny quick story about Erica. She told me, in jest one time, because I'd given her an ASIN, we were the only two people on it. So she's on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast. She told me that candle that I was selling from Kohl's that was my biggest seller in Q4. When she gave me the ASIN, she lost all her East Coast sales. They all went to me, right? So, that's the craziest thing. But we were laughing about it, right? And so in this business, you can get with people who are also doing the same thing you
Yep.
are, and they're happy to help you grow.
Yeah. That's the cool part, is that there
Amazing.
is a community for it, and
A
you
good
just
one.
you just got to tap in. You got to, like, closed mouths don't get fed.
Not at all.
We joke around about that. We always say that on here because it was said to me so many times,
Yep.
but it's true. Closed mouths
100%.
don't get fed. So
Last
yeah.
last question for you, Omar. So we were at the Miami Sellers Conference, and you and I had a conversation, and you just kept doing there's just this little something that we're missing, Blake, that
Yep.
is going to take us. And because we got to this certain place where you're 5,000, 10,000, $20,000 in sales, and we're trying to figure out what is that just gives you that last little bit. And before I met you, and I know a little bit about your story,
Yeah.
I thought Omar already had that.
Yeah.
And tell us about that, because there's so many people on who's gonna be watching this thing who are just like me, and I thought Omar had already flipped that switch.
Right.
And walk me through that. What does that look like? Have you flipped the switch?
Yeah.
And let's talk about it. Go.
All right. So here's the thing. So there's a couple of nuggets in your question. So number one, and just to get cut straight to the point, I do believe I have it and I flipped the switch. I just need to be able to execute on it, and it's capital. Right. So, you can grow at your own pace. I know your story too, Blake. We're in a similar place, right? And how we're, trying to figure things out and move forward. If you want to scale, if you want to get yourself out of a hole, if you want to quit your job, you have to get capital, and people do it in different ways. And I've had a million conversations, and this was kind of like in the background, like, is there a money, is there a loan? Like, Steven does business. I think he took out like a $20,000 loan from his mom or something. Like, other people use business credit cards. It is, at some point, if you want to put gasoline on your fire, the gasoline is money. Right. So that's the switch, right? So I got some capital coming in this week, and I'm talking to Ian to kind of optimize my situation to make it, do the most it can. But that's the switch. But what I would say to that other piece of your question, this is really why I've taken on the Gap King moniker, right? Somebody gave it to me. I didn't give it to myself. Like, the only person who I can give props to who named themselves was LeBron, because he really was the king, like coming out of high school. But anybody else, if you have a nickname that wasn't given to you, it's not a real nickname. But someone actually gave me this nickname and I ran with it. But the reason why I run with this nickname is because Omar, my true given government name, is boring. It's nothing. I'm just a random person. Now, I don't know that many Omars, so maybe it stands out a little bit, but the Gap King, yeah, I met the Gap King. Like, that's like, who the hell is the
Yeah.
Gap King? Or like, what's his thing? And so Blake will tell you at the Miami Sellers Convention the first day, or conference. I keep calling it convention, conference. I was wearing a pink, this hoodie right here in pink. This is red, but I was wearing it in pink. Why? Because I just want people to see me. I want people to be like, who's this idiot wearing a pink hoodie, right? Because
Fake it till you make it.
as many people as possible, right? So Blake, like, how does that, connect to your like, oh, I thought you had it going, right? It is about perception. In college,
Yes.
when I was still DJing, we talked about this probably off air. No, actually, we talked about it on air. I was DJing and I was doing a lot of DJing. I opened for Dave Chappelle and Tracy Morgan, all this other stuff.
All that little stuff.
Yeah, no big deal. But people thought I was rich. People literally in college thought I was rich. Why? Perception, right?
Yep.
I went to Rutgers. If you went to Rutgers when I went to Rutgers, early 2000s, my face was everywhere. My buddy, we've been doing business and marketing together for years, and marketing is what I know. You knew me. Like, you may not have seen me at a party, but you saw my face hanging up somewhere at Rutgers on every campus. So everybody just thought I was literally like a famous person, right? So that was perception. They thought I was rich. I was broke. Don't get it confused, right? But today, you think I'm somebody because I'm the Gap King, right? People come to me all the time in my DMs like, hey, King, not even like the Gap King. Hey, I'm like I got a crown on my head.
That's great.
I say that in all humbleness, with all humility. It makes me feel amazing inside. But I tell you today, I'm nobody. But my brand is somebody.
Yep.
Right?
That's good, man. That's
If
good.
you can do something to kind of, there's one thing that's great, and it's not as important in this community because people are open. But one thing you can do to open doors is to make people think you're important. Make people think you're rich. Make people think you're smart.
Yep.
And you open the doors. So people think because I'm the Gap King, one, I only buy from the Gap. Not true. One, that I'm somebody, like I'm making tons of money. I'm not. And that's the thing. So that's kind of how you thought I was somebody, or flip the switch, Blake, is because I've gone all in on branding myself. You see it. I have a logo, and everywhere I'm at, I'm the Gap King. And that's just because I know that the Gap King is more important than Omar. Omar's nobody. The Gap King, people think he's somebody. So that's
Well, listen, Omar and the Gap King have let Marketplace Mavericks know we need t-shirts. We need some swag.
Get him.
So we're going to get those in the next episode or so coming
Hopefully
up.
we'll have those.
Yeah, we're going to get
and I'll buy one.
Come on.
We're going to get them, if nothing else, maybe we'll become rich off of merch. Who knows?
Hey, listen, it is possible. It is possible, you guys. And listen, I want to say, I know you guys are closing out, but thank you deeply and from the bottom of my heart. I don't think I deserve to be here, but maybe you guys do. And so I'm just
I think you
grateful
were
to
a
share.
perfect first guest, because this is really what we want people to know is you don't need to be doing this for years to be some sort of
Or by yourself.
or by yourself. And I think this one really might get people to understand the networking part about it, because when you first start, you're not going to see it.
Especially
You're not
because
gonna
remember
see
our
it.
market. Remember our market. We're talking guys who are older, and you're not used to doing this networking thing. Not on
Right.
this level.
No.
Not personable. This is all online stuff. Or if you get a chance to do it in person. But this is something that you have to work at.
And
One of the things that I'm really proud about as far as our podcast goes is that we really want a channel that is transparent in terms of Amazon, in terms of community networking, whatever it is, whatever topic we talk about, we want to be really transparent about it so that people actually get value from it. And I think, Omar, you really kind of spoke to that. You were a perfect first guest because of, primarily because of that. So thank you again for being very transparent about your journey and about sort of taking us through it, and just really speaking about where you've come from, what you've learned, and where you're going.
And one more little tidbit, because you guys got to be so self-conscious about age, but it is a great point because, coming into this, you guys aren't old, and maybe you are, but I'm not. I'm playing softball, I'm playing racquetball, I'm bowling in the league,
Absolutely.
and I got two, small kids. You guys aren't old, but anyway, one thing that could be, and I love this space for you guys. One thing that could be intimidating is that a lot of these dudes that are doing 1 million a year or doing 50,000 a month, they're young
Yeah.
because these kids are coming up in different spaces. I see
Yep.
kids in high school making 10 grand,
Yep.
and reselling sneakers. They just had the internet's kind of opened that up, so they have a different skill set than we may have. And so you see all these 20-year-olds cashing out, and you're like, oh, this is a young man sport. No, it's not. Number
No, it's
one,
not.
a lot of the billionaires and millionaires who started businesses, they started them 35 plus, 40 plus. There's a lot of, you just Google it, people who started later in life to become millionaires, they all pop up, right? So don't be intimidated. These guys here are going to be your blueprint for how to do this as an older person, man or woman. Or is it just for, like, you think about like pops, like fathers and dads and things like that?
We want to do it
Women
for
too?
everyone. We
Okay,
just know
anybody
that
over
this
40?
space of
It's kind of an untapped space.
it's kind of
Yeah.
an untapped space. So yeah, we are just glad that we were able to have our first guest. We thank you for coming on, Omar.
No, thank
That
you.
was
Pleasure's
fantastic.
all
We're gonna
mine.
have, we're gonna have more guests on. And we just, yeah, we want to grow this just like we're growing our Amazon. And it doesn't grow beyond just like our little community. Like we're fine with that too. We like doing it. It's fun. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Omar.
Yeah, I'm your first guest, and I want to be your first repeat guest too. So that's
Yeah,
Come on,
we
baby.
can definitely do that. We
Scaling
can
up.
definitely
Scaling up.
do that.
You fit
So
the bill
yeah,
for
thanks
all
for
that.
coming on, Omar.
Thanks,
Wrap
guys.
us,
Really
John.
appreciate
We're gonna keep talking to Omar afterwards because we like hanging out with him. But thanks for listening to another episode of Marketplace Mavericks. Make sure you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button. You're gonna be able to listen to this podcast in your car. You can watch it on YouTube. All the different places. So thanks, guys, for coming by.
Marketplace Mavericks out, baby.
Thanks, Omar.